Hello friends, in this session we are discussing about hydraulic shapers. The hydraulic shapers work on hydraulic drive. So before moving to study about the shaper, we need to study about the hydraulic drive and its basic components. So in this slide you can see that the hydraulic drive it consists of three main portions. One is power pack, that is the one component, and then next is the control elements, and the third one is the actuator. So what is a power pack? So power pack is nothing but it consists of that is the powering device of this hydraulic drive, and it consists of the pump, motor, fluid reservoir, pressure relief valve, filter, piping, etc. Okay, then the control elements is actually controlling the fluid flow. Here, the power pack is actually pressurizing the fluid and it is pumping to the lines, and that uh, pressurized fluid is actually directed to a particular device using these control elements. So these are actually having a number of valves. Normally, valves are used for controlling. Then finally, it is the actuator. Actuator is the mechanism or the part which gives the required movement by the hydraulic pressure, because the hydraulic pressure, the pressure energy is converted into mechanical energy by the actuators. So that is the final element, and from the actuator we are getting the our required work. So these are the main elements of a hydraulic drive. This picture actually shows a representation of all the three components. So we can see this one. This is a symbolic representation. So you can see the tank and the pump over here, and this constitute the power pack, and that is a powering device. Then next is the control valve, the controlling device. So for example, here it is using a direction control valve, otherwise known as DCV. And finally, we are using an actuator, and the actuator shown in this figure is a linear actuator, linear double acting actuator. Okay, so in this picture, you can see a hydraulic shaper and its construction. These are the basic components of a hydraulic shaper, and in this, you can see that how the basic elements of a hydraulic system has been incorporated in a shaper. So you can see the power, the reservoir, and the pump unit, and this one actually comprising the power unit of this one, and otherwise known as power pack of a hydraulic system. And then this is our valve, the direction control valve, and this is the control device DCV. Then this DCV is connected to a cylinder, and this is our actuator, the linear actuator. Okay, and this actuator is actually fitted inside the ram, and this actuator is actually fixed, but the actuator is actually fixed to the body, and the piston end is fitted to the ram. So whenever the piston moves out and inwards, so piston having an extension or contraction, then we will have a forward motion or a reverse motion. Then in additional, you can see that there are two pieces of metals are fixed on the ram, and these are known as trip dogs. It is actually mentioned over here. It is known as trip dogs. Okay, so trip dogs are actually controlling the stroke length. Actually, this can be moved. It can be one trip dog is fixed over here, one is over here. It is fixed with the screws. We can actually move along the ram in this direction and in this direction, so that we can change the length of stroke. So how it is changing the length of stroke? It is actually this by the movement. This strip dog is actually moving a lever, and this lever is known as reversing lever. So this lever position can be in this position, or in the next position, that is the dotted line that is shown in the dotted lines. So it can have a position like this, or if it is a movement in forward direction, the dog will actually trigger it to the next position. So this is position 1 and here it is position 2. So with respect to the position 1 and with respect to position 2, we can have this portion, and this is the valve, and the inside the valve is also constructed like a piston and cylinder, and the piston, which is actually sliding inside a cylinder, in the valve is known as spool. Okay, it is known as spool. So actually this lever is connected to the spool. So with respect to the movement of positioning of the lever from 1 to 2, we will have a movement of the spool in this direction or in this direction. So that is actually changing the status of the valve. That means this is the pressurized line. The line that is this hatched line is actually showing the pressurized fluid, and the without hatching a line is given, and that is the non-pressurized fluid. So this valve is actually deciding where we have to admit the pressurized fluid, whether it's to be in the rear side of the piston or at the front side of the piston. Okay, so that is actually discussed in detail in the next slide, how the system is working. So this is the general arrangement. That's only you needed to uh, understood from this slide. The picture shows the symbolic representation of the hydraulic system. So here we can see that this is the reservoir, and this one is the filter, and this is the pump, and here it is the motor. So the rotation, direction of rotation of the motor is shown with this arrow. And the next is this is the direction control valve, and this is the first position, position 1. So in the position 1, we know that this pressurized fluid is shown as a red colored line in this picture, and now it is admitting to the left side of the cylinder. And what happens, so let's see what happens if the fluid is actually admitting to the left side of the cylinder. Just watch this movement of the piston. Okay, now you can see that it has been moved to the forward direction. So this is the extension movement of the piston. Since the end of the piston is connected to the ram is also moving in the forward stroke. Otherwise, we can tell that that is our cutting stroke. Now, one more thing you have to notice that in the return line, see when the piston is moving from this side left to right, what is happening? The fluid is admitting to the left side and it is filling over here the pressurized fluid, and that is doing the work. And at the same time, the right chamber of the piston also having the fluid. That fluid has to be redirected to the tank. Okay, so that redirection line is actually shown over here, and it will be gone to the tank. Actually, it is actually giving going to the tank. So in the tank line, you can see there is a valve. This is another type of valve. So that valve is actually known as flow control valve. So it is having a shape of an arrow like this, and this is known as flow control valve. So this flow control valve is actually restricting the flow of the fluid from the right side of the cylinder. Why it is given? When it is restricting more area, or otherwise it is providing a very less area, what is happening? The flow of the fluid through this line will be very less. That means the extension of the piston will be slower. So this arrangement, this flow control valve arrangement is used to uh, control the cutting speed of the machine. Okay, that is the arrangement. It is very important. But you can also see that there is a check valve. This is a check valve, or otherwise known as non-return valve. So this non-return valve is actually provided for restricting the flow of fluid in this direction, but it is actually allowing the flow in the reverse direction easily. Okay, that is the thing. Now let's see what is happening in the return stroke, or the position 2 of the lever. So the position 2 of the lever makes the direction control valve in this position. Now what is happening? The valve direction, the pressurized fluid is now moving to the right end of the piston. Earlier it was to the left end of the piston. Now it is now changed to the right end of the piston. So while moving to the right end of the piston, we need the entire fluid to be moved. It should not be restricted. So we needed to bypass this flow control valve. So for that bypassing that flow control valve, we are actually using this check valve. Now you can see the red line is actually showing the flow of the liquid to the either is the hydraulic fluid to the right end of the cylinder. Now let's see what is happening in this position. Okay, now you have watched that the piston has moved to the backward position, otherwise it has retracted, and this is our return stroke of the machine. Now we can tell that we have performed the return stroke. Now the last point, one more control is possible because we need a fast return, that is what is known as quick return motion. So how this quick return motion is affected in this kind of systems? So that is actually the pump is actually provided a constant pressure and a constant discharge fluid. Okay, discharge of the fluid, and the pressure has no effect on this one. Actually the pressure is used to doing some work, so that is actually concerned for the forward stroke. For the return stroke there is no work, so we are not concerned about the pressure, but the fluid flow is very much important because we can see that here the left end of the cylinder we have got area is higher, at the right end the area is less because of the piston rod. Since the area is less, here the volume is also presenting volume is also less. Okay, so the same fluid is admitting for the forward stroke and return stroke, and the more volume is actually presenting for the forward stroke. So the more volume of area has to be, more volume of the space has to be filled with the fluid, so that will be slower. And but in the return it will have a comparatively lesser volume because some volume was taken by the piston rod. So the same fluid we are actually pumping, so lesser space has to be filled with the same quantity of the fluid, so it will actually filling it at a faster rate, and that is actually it is moving fast in the return stroke. So that's how the quick return motion in hydraulic cylinder what hydraulic shapers are affected. Thus, we can tell that we discussed about how the stroke length of the hydraulic shaper is actually controlled, and how the cutting speed can be controlled, and how the quick return motion is achieved. So all the three mechanisms are incorporated in hydraulic shaper. So that's all about the hydraulic shaper. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.